to introduce Chris Donoghue and Jim Sheridan.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm just going to be asking questions. It's late. I'm going to be asking questions, so I'm just going to ask you to welcome the person who made the film that we're all here to hear from, Jim Sheridan. Congratulations on it. So look, when we get into this, you might have questions that are much better than mine or questions that I didn't ask. So we have a couple of microphones in the room, and we'll get you to ask whatever you want to Jim as well. So when it comes to that in just a little bit, just wait till we get the microphone to you so we can all hear you, and then ask away whatever it is you want to ask. So Jim, my understanding is pretty soon before, because this is obviously a well-known novel, but pretty soon after it was published, or just before it was published, the rights were already licensed for a movie. It was already snapped up. So at what point did you become involved? At what point did you want to make this?
What year did the novel come out?
Was it 08, 2008?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really get involved till Noel Pearson's birthday, his 35th birthday. So then Johnny started saying to me I should direct it and get back with Noel, and I was kind of just, I read his script, then I read it again, he changed it, we talked a little bit, and then he died suddenly, and I said, wow, I better make the movie. I don't know, that's kind of what happened, you know. But it was only like, I'd say maybe 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, and Johnny obviously is passing. It was so tragic at such a young age as well, at 50. But with Noel and yourself, I mean, you've had huge success together in the past, and so is the temptation there. I presume people, not long goes without people saying to you, oh, you and Noel should get back together, make a film again, you know, make another classic. And does that get on your wick a bit?
Yeah, you know, it's but you just find the material wherever you find it, you know. I just like the mother-son story in it, you know. That's kind of what drew me to it, and the fact that Noel was doing it and Johnny wanted me to do it so much, you know.
Well, look, it was a big novel. It was nominated for the Booker Prize. Sebastian Barry's a big name. So when you're approaching something that is so recent and is so well liked, but you're adapting it, so you are changing. So anyone who's read the book, Dr. Green isn't as big a role in the film as he is in the book, perhaps. There isn't as much of his backstory.
Yeah.
So how do you decide, okay, I'm going to focus in on this? Because you do very much focus on Rose and Vanessa Redgrave and Rooney Mara.
I think it's just the way movies are. You just have to compress time. So I compressed the time in the present and the time in the past, you know. And in many ways you just have to take, you know, the story leads you where it leads you, you know. I think, you know, I definitely changed more in the past than in the present. His story in the present, you know, it's, I don't know if there's room in a movie for all that, you know. I mean, to do the novel justice, you'd have to do a 10-part TV series or something, you know.
Yeah, there's so much. And you mentioned the mother relationship, and I was reminded of, just when there's great chemistry on screen, I was thinking of Brendan Gleeson and Fionnuala Flanagan at that caring kind of between an older woman and a younger man in the Guard. And Eric Bana and Vanessa Redgrave reminded me of that when I saw this a couple of weeks ago for the first time. So how did you know you could capture that from the two of them, or did that magic just happen together?
I think it just happened, you know. Often magic is the opposite of what you think when you're watching it, you know. Like if people hate each other in a love story, it works. You know, because you got chemistry. You got something happening. Whereas if people kind of like each other, it's usually there's nothing happening on screen.
Yeah.
You know, and Vanessa is such a domineering presence, like, yeah, it's hard not to have chemistry with her because she's so iconic and central and dominating, and
Yeah. Is there a Jim Sheridan effect actually in who pulls into this? Because the cast is extremely impressive. You got Rooney Mara, Jack Rayner, Vanessa Redgrave, Eric Bana. We've mentioned all that. And then, for example, you have Aidan Turner, and he could probably demand, with where his stock is at the moment, a much bigger role in movies, and he probably will demand that as well. But he's taken this role. Was that to work with you, or do you get involved in that?
Yeah, I'd say it was. I'd say he saw a movie with Rooney Mara in it and Vanessa, and he knows it's going to have international exposure, or he thinks it will. And, that's the kind of what draws actors to it as much as me. I hope he came into it because of me. But his part was bigger, but again, I had to cut back a lot of story because we shot too much.
Yeah. Where did you shoot? How do you find, when you want to go back in time in Ireland, how do you find the sets? First of all, by the way, your cinematography is beautiful.
Yeah.
I think you made the Northwest look absolutely gorgeous. That's a new, not that it isn't, but that's a relatively new relationship.
Yeah. Most movies I've only made one with the same. Well, I made two with the same cinematographer. My Left Foot in the Field with Jack Conroy, and In America and Get Rich with Quinn. Declan. Michael was just amazing to work with. He's just so accurate on exposure that, you'd go into any set and say, when are we ready? And he'd go. So that was the conversations we had. Are we ready, Michael? That was it. We hardly spoke beyond that.
And when you're, sorry, to my original question, when you're shooting Ireland and you're going, okay, we're going to World War II Ireland, how do you find the towns?
Well, the truth is now you can take things out. So that part there is Dollymount, and I didn't want to travel too far. What's the number bus out there? So it's like, Dollymount looks great when the sun is low, because it's a big expanse. And I think, movies with scenery in them, it's kind of over. There's been so much shot by National Geographic and, on the new, things that can fly in the air. So I don't think scenery in movies as much as lighting. But Michael was so quick that when the sun would be going down, I just improvised all those scenes on Dollymount Beach, And Inistioge, the town, is like a little town it's like a chocolate box, it's like fairy tale. It's been in a few movies, it's been very, in Circle of Friends, it's kind of almost like fairy tale like. So we had to dirty it up a little bit. There's no wires, there's no overground wires because it was built by a big landlord back in the day. People were great there, and Derek Hughes, the production designer, he's really great at changing found locations into whatever you need,
The Vanessa Redgrave, and this applies to both the book and the film you've made, Vanessa Redgrave, as Rose later in her life, has a secret scripture. And the week that I watched the film, I had just been heavily dealing with June babies and mother and baby homes in work, and a very heavy week. And that story of an injustice done to Irish women for nothing that they did keeps coming up. And I'm sure the audience here, maybe it's crossed more than one or two minds, that same parallel, that an injustice and a punishment that lasts a long time for attention that they didn't seek, or something as innocent as having a child. Was that in your mind making it?
Yeah, myself and Jack Rayner were going to do a documentary on the Tune babies back then, and so that became a big part of my thinking. And in the film and drove me to change the past quite a bit. Like, in the movie that I made, I had Eric Bana like discover dead bodies of kids, and I had it much heavier. Like, the head nun was letting them freeze to death, isn't that right? But then it was so fucking heavy, you know, that I was like, you know, the reality's so heavy I can't put that in. And, you know, I think there's been a few movies made, you know, the Magdalene Laundries, Philomena, you know. I suppose I just wanted to make a movie where the woman at the end gets something out of it, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of easier to do movies that are down, you know, that are like, oh, look how horrible everybody is, you know. Whereas it's not really about, to me, the victimization is not really about religion and sex, it's about resources. You know, it's like, to have a child in a famine society that you may not be able to afford to feed was like a terror that the religious had to place at the center of the society. You know, they had to be more insane than they had to be, they needed to be, you know. But like even me as a kid, you know, like I grew up with the school teaching you, you know, you can't have impure thoughts or impure actions. Like, holy fuck, you know, it's like how do you not have impure thoughts in their definition? It just means you have to lobotomize yourself. So I used to go to confession and say, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. It's an hour since my last confession.